It's now my opportunity to briefly share with you some of my thoughts. 2012 at Kings has been a year to celebrate and reflect upon with a real sense of pride. It's been mentioned already, but January, the release of our NCA results affirmed the progress that we've made as a school. They comfortably eclipsed our impressive results from 2011, and they catapulted us to the premier position in terms of pass rates of all state boys' schools in New Zealand. The article that communicated this success to our community in the ODT created a flurry of emails and phone calls from my colleagues. Sadly, many of those came with a very critical tinge. Some even had the audacity to challenge our methods. But I want you to know the method's been very simple. Make our boys accountable, make them work harder than they've ever worked before, and pour in the hard work that's necessary to actually track every single boy in the senior school, not just the elite ones, to make sure they reach their potential. In February, as school commenced, we were delighted on day one to have 217 sets of Year 9 parents entrust the education and development of their sons to us. My historians tell me that in the 77 years since the school's inception, we've only eclipsed this number twice before. And as Darren mentioned previously, our enrolments for 2013 indicate we're very close to those levels again. The rest of the year has been punctuated with great stories and great successes. Academically, it's been a year to savour. High distinctions and distinctions at an unsurpassed number in both national and international competitions. Kahurangi Cassidy's third place in the Ngā Manu Korero National Speech Competition, topped off by Philip Anderson's national titles in the robotics competition. In the sporting realm, successes have ranged from the national age group selection of individuals like Dan McCombie, Mackenzie Hoare and Joseph Hoare, to the performances of our touch, small bore and football teams on the national and South Island stages. Culturally, some of the highlights have been the selection of Harry Smith as a member of the National Youth Brass Band who travelled to China, and clearly the performances of our Kapahaka group have been the first Otago Secondary School to attend nationals. I've also received several heartening letters from our community this year, referencing the acts of our young men assisting those in distress, the latest of which I read at Assembly just 2 weeks ago. In terms of their character, our young men are going from strength to strength. And many people have asked me this year why. Why the success? Why the transformation? The answer is not a simple one, it's relatively complex. But I think from my perspective, the biggest contributor has simply been the line. And if I was to give a title to this address, it's that. The line. My father's an interesting man. He was born in Woodville in 1943. From his perspective, about 100 years too late, and 12,500 kilometres away from his preferred birthplace. If he had a choice, my father would have been born in the American Wild West. And subsequently, I lived my formative years with his passion for the Wild West, infusing itself into every aspect of my life. If you can imagine, I grew up firing black powder rifles, throwing knives and axes. We'd spend a week every year in Wairau at the National Mountain Man competition. You didn't even know there was one, did you? I would sleep in a 25-foot teepee and dress in buckskins. And I want you to know that's not flattering. Particularly not for a figure like mine. I was raised on stories of the Wild West, and to this day I can still sing those Tex Ritter and Marty Robbins classics word for word. And my children have endured those many evenings. One of the stories, though, that resonated with me during my childhood was the account of the Alamo. Lieutenant Travis had under his command 180 brave souls. And they were the only force that stood between Santa Ana, the Mexican general, 1,500 Mexicans, and the potential rout of Texas. And they took their stand at the Alamo. And it's reported that prior to that battle, Travis took his sword in his hand, and he drew a line, in the presence of his men in the sand. And I want you to know at this school we've drawn a line in the sand. And it represents our expectations. Our expectations of ourselves and our expectations of one another. I contend, and I suppose more strongly than that, I'm convinced that we live in a society where increasingly people are not willing to draw a line. They're not willing to draw a line between good and bad. Those lines have become almost indistinguishable. We're so preoccupied with not offending anyone that we actually fail to hold anyone to account. So many people are not willing to draw lines in their homes with their children. So afraid they might alienate themselves or create some kind of conflict that they choose instead to let their children make decisions that they simply don't have the maturity to make. In not drawing those lines, they subject the ones they love the most to face potential consequences they don't comprehend, let alone have the capacity to negotiate. I just don't get it. Our lawmakers aren't willing to draw the hard lines to protect our young people from the excessive consumption of alcohol. And I continue to bang on about it because I think it's important. It's a scourge in our society, and instead we pussyfoot around the issue, we ignore the statistics and the social carnage associated with those excesses for our young men. I've come to the realisation, as much as it irritates me, that I can't draw those lines. I don't have the power and I don't have the influence. But what we can do is draw the line here in our school, for and with your sons. And that's exactly what we're doing. Drawing the line, though, is really just a starting point, isn't it? That's the easy part. Because the real challenge is holding the line. Holding the line is really about your conviction. You see, whenever you take a stand, whenever you draw a line in the sand, it draws criticism and cynicism. And we've been subjected to both. And it's at this point in the face of the antagonists that your convictions are really tested. Well, I want you to know I'm convicted that what we're doing here in this place with your sons is in the best interest of them both now and for the majority of the rest of their lives. And while I have the privilege of leading the school, I want you to know the line won't be moving. The key questions we need to ask ourselves is it working? You bet it is. Are the boys responding? You can be assured they are. Do they like it? They'll never admit it to you, but they love it. They love the security and they love the environment that the line creates. They love the balance that we've achieved between care and correction and between culpability and compassion. Our current Year 9 students just completed a national engagement survey, a survey that we've run since 2007, and the results are absolutely astounding. 99% of those students, 198 out of the 200 who sat the actual survey, said they were proud to be at the school. And the national survey is 74%. 83% of the boys said that most mornings they looked forward to going to school. The national average was 51%. You know, when Lieutenant Travis drew that line in the sand, he asked his men how many of them would step over the line and fight to their deaths. There was no threat of any recourse and retribution if they said no. Of the 180, 179 of those men stepped up to the challenge and stepped over the line. That mirrors my experience here at King's. The line has been drawn and our young men are stepping up to the challenge, and many of them are rising above the line. I understand it's not a fight to the death, but it's a battle for their futures. Why has 2012 been so successful? Because the young men sitting here were not afraid to rise to the expectations placed on them. They've seen the line drawn and many of them are taking up the challenge. And many of them have done more than that. They've surpassed the line. Rest assured, the line will remain clearly defined here. And while it does, the young King's men we're privileged to invest our lives in will continue to flourish. Boys, I'm proud of you. And I say that to you a lot. But I want you to know it's not empty platitudes and words. Because you are rising to the challenge. You're rising above the line. And it's an absolute pleasure to spend this part of my life with you. The final award for us to celebrate then is the Ducks. The Ducks is the award for the best performing academic student in the school. About to be recorded in King's history is the name of the 2012 Ducks. Brass plaques in the foyer will commemorate this achievement. This student will win the Ducks medal, the Old Boys Jubilee Scholarship, the PTSA Prize and the Rector Scholarship. This young man has achieved exceedingly well this year. He's characterised by his exceptional application to his schoolwork and an unparalleled determination to excel. And these attitudes are complemented by a sharp mind. He was placed first in every one of his 5 Year 13 subjects. He was first in accounting, he was first in economics, he was first in geography, he was first in history, and he was first in statistics. The deserved winner and the 77th Ducks of King's High School is Sean Markham. Thank you, Maureen, and congratulations, Sean. An exceptional achievement.